Hello, book friends. Terri from Terri Talks Books, or Ms. Terri B here on YouTube. Welcome back. Welcome to my new subscribers, and welcome back to everyone who's been here for a while or a long time. I hope if you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope that you had a very nice Thanksgiving. I hope it wasn't too crazy. I hope the food coma wasn't too extreme. I had an okay Thanksgiving. It was a little bit crazy. Someone ended up in the hospital, so there was that. Someone else decided to be their typical selves and place their happiness on everyone else. So there was that. Other than that, the food was great. I had some good times with some friends and with my husband. So it wasn't all bad, but it was kind of exhausting, and I'm ready to just move along so we can get to the next holiday and maybe go through that all over again. So how was your Thanksgiving? Really, truly, let me know in the comments below. Do you celebrate Thanksgiving? I know a lot of you are international, so you might not be doing that. And my Canadian friends, you have your Thanksgiving in October. So let me know. Do you celebrate? Do you avoid holidays? What do you think about them? So this can be an ongoing conversation, because there's 2 more coming upon us very quickly. So anyway, with that said, let me talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, I got my hair cut. I was just going nuts. My hair, I have a lot of hair. It's a blessing, but anyone with a lot of hair will let you know that they get irritated with it at times. So I try not to complain about it because it is truly a blessing, and it grows very quickly. And it had just been like a weed that had been watered, and it was driving me absolutely nuts. So I went to the salon, I sat down in the chair, and I said, cut it off, just cut and do what you want, except no pixie cut. I can't deal with a pixie cut. Nope, don't do that. That goes back into my childhood. We're not doing that. So I sat down in the chair, and this is how it came out. And in the back, it cuts up a little bit there. It's starting to fix the hairs here. Yeah, it's cut up. It cuts up into the back a little bit, so it gets it up off my neck. And this isn't in my face as much, and it's just long enough to do that and get that little bit tucked. So anyway, yes, elephant in the room. Now we can talk about books. So what am I doing? What am I doing today? I am doing a bit of a wrap up. It's a wrap, such as it is, because I don't really have that much to wrap up. I have been having the weirdest 2 months as far as my reading goes. And honestly, even if I am more or less enjoying a book right now, for the last 2 months, whatever I'm reading, I don't want to be reading it. I want to read that book over there. Whatever that book over there is. I have no idea. Is it something in the air? Is it something in the water? Staying focused has been a little bit of a problem. I understand maybe a little bit of why that might be, but some of it is not really explainable. And this doesn't happen to me very often, but it's happening now. So everything I said in my last book video about what I would like to finish before the end of the year, take that with a grain of salt. I will address some of it. I did actually finish one of them. So I have just a few to actually wrap up. So let's get going. The first one, I don't remember where I heard about this, but it got on my radar, and I thought, I think I would like to read that right now. That being The Deep by Alma Katsu. This is a historical fiction thriller, supernatural thriller, with actually a true supernatural element to it. So you know how we can have these books that have a supernatural element, or is it? and everything gets explained, and none of it was supernatural. It was just Bob walking down the hallway and he bumped into something and all the candles blew out because whatever reason the author comes up with, you know, like that. This one actually had a bit of a supernatural element. There is a ghost or spirit of sorts, and a little bit disturbing. So the historical fiction part of it was about the Titanic and the sinking of the Titanic. So there are names involved that you would recognize from the episode with the Titanic from history. And then some made-up characters as well. And I only gave this 3 stars on Goodreads. It was fine. I think that it's a little bit long. Was it close to 400 pages? I think it was a little bit long and it got dragged out. And I did not necessarily care for the author's pacing on the supernatural part of it, the way she fed that into the story and then dealt with it. And it has more to do with that. The 3 stars has more to do with that part of it, the pacing maybe, than the story itself. The story was fine. So it's a fine book. 3 stars is respectable. You know, I enjoyed it well enough. There was nothing necessarily that stood out to me. Now, this author, I'd never heard of Alma Katsu. Have you heard of her? Have you read anything by her? I think it's a she. I'd never heard of this author, and they all, when I go through and read the blurbs, synopses of her other works, they all have the same kind of historical fiction and thriller element to them. So it must be her thing, I guess. She's written more than I realized. So, yeah, let me know if you've read this. It was enjoyable enough if you're looking for something to read. And I did read it here on my old, very old Kindle Fire. This was this first generation? It still works. And I can still download books to it. Some of the features don't work on it anymore, but it's old. And I have where did I put it? Oh, it's over there. Anyway, I have a cute little holder that I keep it in. It's a little pouch made by, what is her name? The Novel Nuzzler. Novel Nuzzler. If I remember, I'll link her below. I think I know her from Instagram. So anyway, if I remember, I'll link that below. But anyway, it fits this just perfectly. So I've been using that. So what else did I read? This was a reread, A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Vanauken. This was a buddy read with Kate Howe. We have both, each of us have read this before. For me, it had been quite a long time ago that I read this. I might have been in my 20s. Was it that long ago? Early 90s? Mid to late 80s? I'm not sure. And I talked about this book in a video I did earlier this year about, was it 8 books, I think? 5 or 8 books that have meant something to me in my life. So I didn't really talk about the book that much. I talked about what it meant to me. And this book is a book about grief. It is a bit of a theological treatise on grief, but it is not academic, except for a few times with C.S. Lewis letters. C.S. Lewis was a friend, became a friend of Sheldon Vanauken and his wife. And so when Sheldon was going through grief, there were a fair number of letters that went back and forth between the two men. And so Lewis he can pack so much into such a short space. So in some of his letters, I slowed way down, and it is a little bit more academic, a little bit more philosophical in nature. But the rest of it just flows. It's Sheldon Vanauken has a beautiful way of writing, and it's very poetic. It flows. His descriptions are just amazing. They can kind of put you in the scene, so to speak. And this is just about the grief about his life with his wife, their relationship. And then when she died, was she in her early 30s? Something like that. When she died, he was just so broken, and kind of the healing process he went through, if you can even call it recovery, if you can even call it healing. Anyone who has dealt with grief at this level, it's a funny thing. Not ha-ha funny. It is just, you can talk to someone else who's gone through it, and they just know. They know what you're saying. They understand what you're trying to say. And everyone has a little bit of a different way of dealing with it. He was able to spend the time pretty much right after she died going through his grief process and dealing with it more or less fairly in a fairly methodical way, and did a lot of reflection. And I don't want to use the word healing, but I'm going to go ahead and use that word here. Healing in the first year. So my experience, this sucker dragged out for like 7 years because I was not able to sit with my grief. I did not have the opportunity to really, I'd never experienced it before, and I didn't have the opportunity to just sit with it and really feel it and think about it. So it dragged out a little bit longer than it did for Sheldon Vanauken. So anyway, it's not a very long book. If you're looking for a book on grief and maybe something from a Christian perspective, and sometimes very smart writing, you might look this one up. A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Vanauken. So I finished that, but that one was a reread. Then this book is no longer on my shelf of shame. It was one of the longest inhabitants on the shelf of shame. It is now moving over to place of pride on my shelf of essays. What is that, you might ask? Well, you've seen it before. In Favor of the Sensitive Man and Other Essays by Anais Nin. You've heard the story. I've had this since like 1990. It was a gift. I wanted to read it. I didn't read it. I didn't read it. I didn't read it. And here we are, 2025. So I finally finished this. I finished it this month. I started in September, and because it's essays, I didn't feel in a big hurry to read through them and paste them out, but I knew that I wanted to have this finished before the end of the year for sure, but I really wanted to have it finished before the end of November. So I accomplished that. Now this book here, I did not get along with the fiction of Nin's that I have read, but I got along with her essays here just fine. And these all have copyright dates from 1966 to 1976 for the different essays. So she has this broken up into 3 sections: Women and Men, which tends to be dealing with gender similarities, differences, a bit feminist, I would say. Women and Men, a good handful of essays. Then she has a second section, Writing, Music, and Films. These are kind of, long reviews in one sense. And I found them very interesting, very intriguing some of them I struggled with, but that was because I wasn't familiar with the author's writing that she was talking about, or the specific thing she was talking about, a book or essay or short story, whatever it was. And then music, same thing. If I was familiar with the composer or the piece of music, it meant a lot more to me. Otherwise, I was just kind of trying to absorb what I could. And then films. One of my favorites was probably the one about Ingmar Bergman, and I am familiar with Ingmar Bergman's films. And then there were some that I had no idea. She had one here at a journal workshop. That was very intriguing to me. And then the third section, Enchanted Places. Just listen to these titles. The Labyrinthine City of Fez, Morocco. The Spirit of Bali, Port Villa, New Hebrides. The Swallows Never Leave Noumea, and My Turkish Grandmother. I loved these essays. They were about places during periods of time in the 20th century, more or less the first half, I think, of the 20th century or mid 20th century, in places that just seem exotic to those of us who have never been there, and from a certain time period. I think a lot of these places really did hold a sense of enchantment, exotic enchantment. She really wrote these well. And so I don't know how much of it is that the places, would they seem enchanting to me, or would I get there and go, this is a mess? Or is it her writing making these places enchanted? So I really did enjoy the third group of essays the most, but I have marked some different things in here. I'm thinking what I might do is see what I want to actually say about some of these individual essays, maybe do a review just on this book. It sure deserves it, I think. Essays can be difficult to collect. Essay collections can be difficult to talk about because they're kind of like short stories, and each one will speak to you differently, and they can be about different, they stand alone on, by themselves, and so they can be a little bit difficult to talk about as a collection. So I'll see if I can come up with something that would make some sense to put here. But I have marked quite a few things, and I've got sticky notes and all sorts of things in it. So anyway, yay. No longer on Shelf of Shame. And thank you to my friend Carrie from the long ago, who probably will never see this, for giving this book to me. I finally read it, and I am grateful. Now, that was the wrap up. That was it. That's what I did in November. What am I reading now? Well, I started this earlier in the month for Nonfiction November. I'm still working on it, so I'm not wrapping it up yet. That is Didion and Babitz by Lili Anolik. Now, you've heard me talk about this before because I'm working on a project that involves both of these authors, a personal project that involves both of these authors, reading their works. And I picked this up when it came out last November and then sat on it for reasons, and am now reading it. And I am about 100 pages in, and this is a little over 300 pages. So this is not going to get finished today, this month. It will bleed over into December. And I do feel a little bit like bleeding, that it's going to bleed over because I read the first chapter, and the author's writing style, Lili Anolik, was really setting me off, and not in a good way. She's doing something, and I'm not sure if it's intentional, just her usual style, because I've never read anything by her before. But it's almost as though I will go back and think about what it was that was bothering me. But it's almost as though she's leaving out the subject of a sentence, of a paragraph, and I have to keep going back. It's like, no, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? So it's not setting with me, and I'm not in the best of places for reading right now. And that's frustrating. That's very frustrating. I will read this. I will finish this book because of my reading project. Now, chapter 2, what am I on? Chapter 4? I think I am going into chapter 4. Chapter 2 and 3 were about Joan Didion, and the writing style, for some reason, didn't seem as annoying at this point. So is she doing something, like when she talks about Eve Babitz, chapter 1 was primarily about Eve Babitz, is she trying to do something stylistic? If she is, I'm not appreciating it. Or is it just that I'm more interested now in hearing about Joan Didion? Now, if you don't know, the author, Lili Anolik, got access to a box of letters to Eve Babitz, from Eve Babitz to other people. These letters had just gotten packed away in the back of a closet, and when she passed away, Eve Babitz's sister contacted the author and said, would you like this box of letters? Would you like to at least see them? They reside at the Huntington Library, if you're in Southern California. So if you're familiar with the Huntington, it's a library museum, and what else is it? Botanical gardens. Anyway, it's quite a fascinating place. I've been there many times. And so anyway, the letters reside there now. So the thing is, Babitz was pretty mostly transparent, if you could believe her, through her writings, about who she was, because she's no longer with us. Neither is Joan Didion at this point. Joan Didion is a bit harder to get at. She was a cool customer. She liked that description too. So it's a little bit harder to get to Joan. And I think what the author is doing here, I think the premise of this is that she's trying to get to Joan and get a better sense of who was Joan Didion through Eve Babitz. So it reads a bit at this point, a lot actually, like gossip. So I don't usually go for that kind of thing. Sorry, I keep looking off over here, and I'm sorry about that. I don't usually go for that kind of thing, Hollywood gossip. But in this case, it is appropriate and kind of fun in a way. So I'll get back to you on this, but I started reading this and immediately ran into trouble. And with the mood I'm in, it's like, I want to read that book over there. I don't want to be reading this. So anyway, so I am working on this, and hopefully I'll finish it up soon and then can report back to you. I did mention that one of the books that I'm working on and would really like to, I really wanted to have this finished by the end of the year, 2025. I don't think that's going to happen. It's Bleak House by Charles Dickens. I am still at the 200-page mark. I haven't gotten back to it, but I do want to pick it up sometime this month, you know, a number of times this month, and keep making some progress. I'm just not fully invested in the story yet. I think that's what's going on. You know, it's a chunkster. I'm at the 200-page mark. This is about 1,000 pages, so we got plenty of time to get invested in this. But anyway, and some of it's just me and my reading mood. So I will be getting back to this, and hopefully we'll read out of it this month. I am about to start reading a book for book club, Isabel Allende, A Long Petal of the Sea, which is fairly new. What year is this? I have to have this read in the next 2-ish weeks. This has English Language Translation 2020 by Isabel Allende. Fairly new. So anyway, we are reading this, and I did open it up and read a couple of pages, and there was a piece of poetry right at the very beginning, 1938. It says, "Get ready, lads, to kill again, to die once more, and to cover the blood with flowers." Pablo Neruda. I know the name. I know the poet. Not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And under that it says, "Bloody was all the earth of man," in quotes, and then in all caps, "The Sea and the Bells." So maybe "The Sea and the Bells" was a collection of poetry. And maybe the poem is "Bloody was all the earth of man." Anyway, kind of intriguing. And then I read the first 2 pages here, and I thought, oh, I think I'm going to be okay with this. I hope so. I really do hope so. I need some wins here. But anyway, I think the idea here is late 1930s, Civil War grips Spain. I have read the back of this to you before. I will hold it up so you can pause and read that if you would like. So I'm getting the sense of historical fiction, and apparently the poet Pablo Neruda, because I'm not sure how you pronounce it, so that's what I will say for now, he plays into the story. Oh my, okay. So somehow, some way. So I don't know how much magical realism will come into this. I know that Isabel Allende has been known to include that in her writing. So I like magical realism, so that won't bother me. So anyway, I'll have to report back to you on that when I get it finished. I am about to pick this up because I am thinking maybe I need something that I'm pretty sure I'm just going to have so much fun reading it and kind of whiz through it pretty quickly, not thinking about other books, not looking at those other sexy books over there while I'm reading this one. What is that? The Secret Christmas Library by Jenny Colgan. This just came out. I have read some of her other Christmas books and fully enjoyed them. And this one is going to take place in Scotland, at a castle in Scotland. There's a missing book, a rare book that's missing. There's a laird, lord of the castle, I think. Anyway, we're going to have some mystery. We're going on a hunt for a rare book. Oh yeah, a delicious mystery with a hint of romance and plenty of holiday spirit. Anyway, I have had fun with her books before, so I fully anticipate enjoying this, and I'm hoping it will work as a bit of a reset for me so I can deal with this other stuff over here that I'm reading. That there's nothing wrong with any of it, well, short of the bio that I'm reading, the biography I'm reading that I just talked about, but I'm hoping it'll help reset me. So I quit having this whatever problem I'm having. And then what else am I reading? I actually like to read cookbooks. This one's a regional one. I picked it up at a local museum gift shop. This is Christmas in Arizona cookbook, Recipes, Traditions, and Folklore for the Holiday Season by Lynn Nusom. And so this is very Southwestern, and this is my thing. These are my people. This is my home. And there are going to be some recipes in here with a Mexican twist and also Hopi and Navajo blended in, and some good old Midwestern stuff as well. But the reason I am having fun reading it is because there are old advertisements or other interesting things from the past. This advertisement from the Arizona Daily Star, dated December 23rd, 1914, gives us some idea of what was served in Arizona's restaurants, some at the time, 80 years ago. Now it's over 100 years ago. And note the affordable prices. This is the menu, Christmas dinner at a place called Rossi's. Music by Phillips Orchestra. And then we have the menu. So I thought, you know, that's fun. I love stuff like that. And then there are some things like this one. There's a typo. It says celebration. It should be celebration in the cities of Arizona. It's about a 2-page bit of celebrations, Christmas celebrations around the state of Arizona. Some of them still, to this day, happen. And so they are listed out. And I've been to some of these. So it's just fun, fun, fun for me. And then here is a recipe, prosciutto, that Italian word, and green chili frittata. So very, very southwestern. There's, of course, tamale recipes and things like that. You can't live where I live without knowing about tamales at Christmas. It's not Christmas if you're not having tamales, whether you're Mexican or not. If you live here, it's just the way it is. Anyway, we grow a lot of our own chili peppers. My husband actually is the one doing most of that, and I help out, but he has jalapeno. This year he had jalapenos and ancho chilies. So he's done a bit of processing lately. So we have a lot of chilies, and we just put them in all sorts of things. So this one sounded really good. So we've got this Italian ham of sorts there, prosciutto, and then the green chilies in a frittata would be eggs, right? We've got cheese, various cheeses, tomato, parsley, some onion, pepper. Ooh, there's even a tablespoon of tequila. Yum. Oh, wow. I actually have to make that one. I haven't made that one before. So anyway, so I'm having fun reading out of this regional cookbook. Just something I like to do. And then this one's coming up, and I hope to start it this month. I am doing this as a buddy read. I need to talk to my buddy. So it's kind of a December, January, and/or January. And I need to talk to the buddy and find out how we want to handle this. But it is The Warden by Anthony Trollope. I'm finally going to do it, people. I'm doing it. I'm going to read Trollope, and it's not even a chunkster. This is the first in the Chronicles of Barsetshire, or Barsetshire Chronicles, however, whichever direction you say that. I am so looking forward to this. I'm so excited. I have not read Trollope except for a short piece, and I thought, ooh, I think Christmas at Thompson Hall. That's what I've read, and so I thought, oh, I think I'm going to enjoy Trollope. So I'm going to get started, and so I need to just get the reading plan lined up. I am looking forward to this, and I hope I'm in a better reading mood when I get to that, because I want to just enjoy reading Trollope. I really, really do. So anyway, so that's my reading month, my wrap up, my currently reading, a little bit of my future plan, such as it is. How was your November? How was your reading? I already asked about Thanksgiving. How is your reading? How is it going? And do you have plans for December? Let's chat in the comments below, and I will talk to you all again soon, book friends. Bye-bye.